Good game.
Throughout the 30-hour adventure,
Strange crystallized substances?
having a hazy setting and a forgettable protagonist isn't exactly unique to this type of game, but
No.
if the non-fantasy setting had you hoping this might be one of the ways in which AI Limit breaks the mold, nah.
I told Akari, like, I thought Akari was gonna play this.
The actual action is largely an
Oh, this bitch was
impression
so
of better
annoying.
Souls-likes. You'll split your time between
Yeah.
exploring dark and dangerous places, fending off these smaller enemies as you work your way to the next bonfire-like checkpoint, and confronting big menacing bosses
That's
with
cool.
long health bars and deadly attacks.
Like, I think this visual is pretty good. Like, I mean, the game looks good, as I said.
But that familiar structure underwhelms almost immediately here, thanks to a lack of enemy variety, samey and empty levels, and combat
Yeah.
that's overly simplistic and unchallenging.
I don't see how, like, this is one thing that I would criticize IGN with, is like, how is it that that's true with this game, but not Assassin's Creed Shadows? Because, like, I feel like this game has more dynamic combat than Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is, like, really, like, pretty low. But, I don't know, they gave Shadows a 9? Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me.
You'll swing melee weapons several times larger than your body, loose spells that shoot fire, lightning, and more at your opponents, and of
Yeah.
course, dodge roll and parry to keep yourself alive. But while there's not much unique to be found in AI Limit's combat, the few new things it tries are mostly good ideas that make me wish it took more risks. The biggest of these mechanics is the sync rate bar, which fills up as you do damage and is drained when you use spells or get hurt. The higher your sync
makes you
rate,
do more
the
damage.
more damage you'll do. But if you take too many hits or use too many spells, you'll find yourself in a weakened state, unable to use many of your abilities until you land some blows. That rewards cautious play and allows you to cut through boss fights more quickly if you manage to avoid damage while you press the attack. It's also nice to
Yeah, I think it was a good system, too.
determine how often you can use your spells by how well you play, instead of being limited by a mana meter or something like
Yeah.
that. AI
Yeah,
Limit
I think that mana and that kind of stuff isn't as interesting as having a resource that you generate through combat and gameplay.
even ditches the stamina bar entirely, a genre staple
Yeah.
I largely find annoying, letting you attack without fear of running out of steam so long as you're paying attention to your sync rate.
This guy's pretty
There's
good.
also a pretty neat system where you unlock 4 special powers that you can freely swap between in the middle of combat, like this one that turns your arm into a shield, or this ability that lets you make short, quick dashes from place to place.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the first of these abilities allows you to parry enemy attacks, and there's almost no reason to switch to any of the other powers once you have it, since almost everything can be pretty reliably parried doing this to the enemy.
Yep.
So while toggling between these to do some interesting stuff in the middle of combat is a great concept, fights rarely play out that way.
Yep.
You'll mostly encounter slightly different versions of aliens that look like scrapped monster ideas from Stranger Things, and these generic robots with identical attack patterns, all of which are easily avoided or parried.
I don't think that's fair to say. This is the tutorial boss. Yeah, it's literally like Asylum Demon or something.
with little trouble. Plus, they almost always come at you one at a time. Boss fights are largely straightforward too, with
This is the first
extremely
boss.
telegraphed moves that can, once again, be easily parried, stopping those big bads in their tracks as they forget what they were doing for several seconds, while you slash
I think that, like, giving monsters and giving bosses well telegraphed attacks is not a bad thing. Like, I don't agree with this logic, is that, like, and this is a big issue that I think Souls-like runs into, is that a lot of games create difficulty in Souls-like games, or, like, Souls-likes create difficulty in ways that is, like, very, very high friction. Like, for example, like in Kazan, the bosses have just, like, an insane amount of health, and they also have a lot of delay attacks. I think that delay attacks are cheap And I think that they reward people for just kind of practicing a boss and not being able to like intuitively play the game and predict it. And so the big issue really with a lot of these games is that they keep trying to be harder and harder, but the ways that they try to achieve that difficulty, I don't feel like are particularly rewarding or fun to play. It's just frustrating. And so I don't think this, like, these games don't always have to be like Wukong is a great example of this, right? Like, Black Myth Wukong is not a really, really hard game, but at the same time, it feels good to play, and it's a great game. And I think that there needs to be more of a focus on, like, the experience the player has and the enjoyment that the player has, more so than just making the bosses really hard through artificial means. Like, you can barely see the boss, or he has attack patterns that are hard to read. Like, I feel like that's like a really, really, like, fucking lame way of difficulty. Personally, that's what I would say.
Away half their health. I mean, seriously, just look at this guy. Bosses also only very rarely have interesting designs, like this guy, who's just a flying version of the same Stranger Thing monsters you've already been fighting. Many more are disappointingly recycled, either by almost immediately being reintroduced as common foot soldiers, or when they're just straight up reused in another boss fight later on. It's unfortunate because there are times where AI Limit clearly shows promise, like later in the story when the generic slow-moving bosses very occasionally make way for engaging battles against fellow bladers.
Yeah, I remember.
Their movesets are more interesting and
challenging,
challenging, and they have their own sync rate bars that must be depleted through attacks and parries in order to reduce the amount of damage they do and open them up to devastating finishing moves. There's also one or two encounters where AI Limit tries new stuff, like a fight against a giant robot that sits at the end of the room trying to blast you with deadly lasers, and the only way to defeat it is by destroying the electrical equipment powering it as you cut through its minions. But these fights are few and far between, leaving you to slap around the slow-moving and much less interesting enemies that make up the bulk of the boss fights most of the time. Another thing that holds AI Limit back pretty significantly is how buggy it is. I had at least a dozen crashes, got stuck in the environment in ways that caused me to twitch bizarrely, fell right through the floor during boss fights, and once even continuously respawned over and over again at a save point that threw me through the map until I went to the PlayStation dashboard and closed the app.
Yeah, console issues.
Some of these crashes happened when I was quite deep into exploring an area and far away from a checkpoint, forcing me to start over again through no fault of my own and lose materials in the process.
That's
in
annoying.
fact, nearly all of my...
Yeah, I think probably this guy's technical difficulties did really shade his review, and I think that makes sense. Like, if you're playing a game and it's, like, full of tech problems, like, you're probably going to have a negative impression of the game.
Most frustrating deaths came from straight up glitches rather than fighting bad guys.
I mean, I could see him getting
There was even this
frustrated.
one time where all the enemies became invisible.
Like,
and I had to
I would say, like, I mean, if you liked Code Vein, you should play this game. For sure.
run through the entire area spotting enemies by their floating weapons. That's not exactly the kind of difficulty I was hoping for, but honestly, even that wasn't challenging. AI Limit is a Souls-like without any soul, providing 30 mediocre hours of dodge rolling and sword swinging that's good for little more than filling time. I sliced my way through repetitive goons in unremarkable locations, killed some pushover bosses who were dead before I thought to learn their names, and spent more time recovering from game crashes than learning anything noteworthy about the bland sci-fi setting or the characters within it. The stylish art style, smart sync rate system, and swappable abilities are interesting tweaks to the blueprint, but are ultimately too minor to leave much of an impression. If you're really hurting for more opportunities to scratch that Souls-like itch, you could probably do worse than AI Limit, but you could also easily do a whole lot better. For more, check out our reviews of Assassin's Creed Shadows and Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
Yeah, I think that a lot of this feedback is pretty fair, but I think also, like, I'd be really curious to see like the way that people play this game that aren't like veterans of Souls-like games, because this is a big issue that I think a lot of these games have. Is that again they're designed for people that have beaten the Elden Ring DLC, and like I think Lies of P was kind of like this. I mean, even though obviously I know chronologically it doesn't make sense, but like I'm saying, like it's really really hard, and I think Kazan is like this too. And so, like, I don't think it's really a great thing to go and just make the game harder and harder and harder. And just, that makes the game better. I think there's a lot of games that are, like, really challenging, but they don't necessarily make the experience any better. I would say this game is between, like, I'd say it's probably a 6 or so, but from the demo that I played, but I didn't go back and play the full game. I don't think this game is like an 8 or anything like that, but I think if you like Souls-like games and you like this anime style, like, you know, Wuthering Waves or whatever, then, or especially Code Vein, like, you're really gonna like this game. It's a 7.5 to me. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, like, as somebody, I've played a lot of Souls games, and so, like, I'm kind of, like, you know, I have a lot of opinions about it. But, yeah, that's it. 5 is with no payoff, 6.5 full gameplay and a sponsor. Yeah, right? And I'd say 6.5, sure, that's okay. Part of the reason why Wukong was so popular, it's super accessible for casuals. Yeah, exactly, right? And I beat Elden Ring and Sekiro, and I still have a hard time in Lies of P. Yeah, but the reason why is, like, it's because of the attack patterns and the way that they're telegraphed. And I think that that's, like, a really, like, a poor way of creating difficulty, right? And you can stagger a lot of bosses in this game, like in DS3, for example. Yeah, I know. And that's another thing is that I feel like, is this game really that much harder than, like, is it easier than Dark Souls 1 or 3? Like, I would say, like, I mean, outside of DLC, it's probably not. It's probably harder than those games. Because, like, I don't think people realize how easy those games were. Like, a lot of the bosses, like, if you look at the damage that they take, like, you do the exact same thing to Pontiff. You can do the same thing to Gundyr. You can do this with so many other bosses. So, it's not like it's really any different. As long as you know how to make a build, yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? Let me read a few comments. 5 out of 10 from IGN. Finally, a game worth playing. After seeing Veilguard make a 9. Well, what I find to be, like, really weird about this is that it's almost like there's a double standard with combat, where, like, combat in games like Assassin's Creed Shadows or Veilguard is, like, seen as an afterthought and not, like, a core foundation. But combat in this game is considered the main defining factor. And I don't really understand. Like, I think this game has better combat than Assassin's Creed Shadows. I do, because I think Assassin's Creed Shadows is, like, really not a great combat game. It's just not. And it does by far. Yeah, that's just my opinion. And, like, why is combat in this game not really... Because, like, I mean, you're an assassin, right? I mean, there's more story. Yeah, well, there's more elements of it. Definitely. You gonna play it on stream? What, AI limit? I don't know, I might. I haven't really decided yet, honestly. I don't know. Lost credibility the moment he says to find stamina bar annoying in Souls games. I agree with that. I think the stamina bar is annoying a lot in Souls games. I do. I think that's true. Like, I mean, like, Sekiro didn't really have a stamina bar. Like, it did and it didn't, right? At least I don't remember it having a stamina bar. It has, like, a parry and, like, a stagger bar, but that's it. Yeah, it doesn't? Yeah, I don't think so either. It needs to compensate. Sekiro is perfect. Yeah, I don't think you need a stamina bar. Played the demo, is actually pretty good. Could use some improvements. Still good overall. Yeah. I'll probably play it and beat this game eventually, though. You rage quit Sekiro? I beat the game. And I also beat all the other, like, optional bosses, like Demon of Hatred. And, you know, like, Inner, or like Father Owl or whatever. And yeah, you gave Sekiro a 9? No, of course not. I gave it a 10. It's a 10. This is a perfect game. Sekiro is a perfect game. AI limit. Like, I bought the game already. Like, I'm going to eventually play it. It's just that I haven't yet, that's all.
What you doing?